I'll be honest, I haven't slept well in months. Because right now, being Jewish feels less like living and more like surviving. And it's painful how much of my rabbinate is no longer about cultivating joy and teaching Torah, but about answering to headlines and negotiating security. Some of us may feel afraid, others defensive. Most of us, I think, though, just feel exhausted from the news cycle, from the arguments, from always having to brace ourselves. And that exhaustion seeps into even our everyday choices, what we wear, what we post, what we say out loud. All too often now, I find myself meeting people not in joy, but in fear. And I don't want to live that way anymore. And I don't think you do either. That's what a survival-only posture does. It seeps into every corner, until every choice feels like a test you never signed up for. Someone mentions Israel, and suddenly you're expected to have the perfect response based on the person who is asking the question. Not too critical, not too supportive, but either way, always ready to defend. And it's not just about Israel. It's about Judaism itself. Every conversation becomes a calculation, every choice a defense. Do I hang a mezuzah on the front door or keep it tucked away in my drawer? Do I let my child wear a camp sweatshirt with Hebrew letters to school or tell them not today? Do I mention I'm Jewish in this conversation or let it slide this time? The rituals haven't changed. It's the questions in our heads that have. And whether we recognize it immediately or not, the truth is, when we start to allow those questions and our resultant answers to take up all the space of our Judaism, we are no longer living it from a place of purpose. We are living it instead from fear. Yes, anti-Semitism is real, and of course we take it seriously. But the deeper danger is not only what they might do to us, it's what fear is already doing within us. The writer Dara Horn calls this Hanukkah anti-Semitism, not the desire to kill Jews, but the desire to make Jewish civilization irrelevant and to make us the agents of our own erasure, to convince us our way of life should take up less space until it disappears. When we tuck in our necklace or whisper about a Shabbat dinner, we are answering to the same pressure that once tried to make the temple in Jerusalem just another Greek gymnasium. Just another Greek gymnasium. This is the spiritual crisis and the real question we are being called to answer in this moment. Not whether we'll survive as Jews, but whether we'll choose to thrive as Jews. Tomorrow morning's Torah portion makes this choice for us clear. I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life. The Torah doesn't pretend that life is only filled with blessing. It tells us plainly, both are always before us. Joy and fear. Hope and despair. What matters is how we choose. Will we let the curses define us? Or will we choose to see the blessing and to live from a place of purpose? This Yom Kippur is our chance to make that choice, to set the terms of Jewish life not by fear, but by what we value, by what has meaning, by what connects us to something larger than ourselves. And that is why this night matters. Kol Nidre is the night we admit our failures, the promises we could not keep. And yet here we are beginning again. Not to prove anything or justify our existence, not out of fear, but because Jewish life itself is worth returning to, worth claiming, worth living out loud and with pride. Here is what living unapologetically Jewish can look like. I don't need anyone else's permission to be who I am or their approval to practice my faith. This is my heritage, my path, my choice. And notably, it is these high holy days that gives us 3 practices to make this claiming possible. Not for show, not for a defensive strategy, but for their own sake. Our machzorim tell us teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah. They can temper the severity of the decree. Most years we hear that as a promise, that if we do these things, maybe the worst won't come. But what if we've been reading it wrong? What if the harshest decree isn't what anti-Semites might do to us? What if the real decree is what we're already doing to ourselves? Think about it. When Jewish life is only a defensive reflex, when holidays become about proving we're still here instead of celebrating, when we attend Jewish events to show solidarity rather than to connect, that is the real harsh decree. Not what others do to us, but what we end up doing to ourselves, making Judaism smaller and smaller until the only thing left is fear. Which is why our tradition gives us teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah, not to protect us from our enemies, but to protect us from forgetting who we are. Each of these is an invitation. Let's explore them together one by one. First, teshuvah, return unapologetically. This summer, an Israeli man told me he hadn't stepped foot in a synagogue in almost 50 years. Then one Shabbat, he just walked in. He couldn't explain why. Something pulled him back. And then the next week, he came again, only this time with a friend. That is teshuvah. Not perfection, not a plan, one step that opens the next. Teshuvah doesn't mean repentance. It means return. Return in all its forms. Return to the best of who you can be. Return to the best of your Jewish identity. Return to saying, this is my heritage, my covenant, my path. This is home. Too often, teshuvah becomes defensive, a way to protect ourselves. We say sorry just to smooth things over, or worse, we wait for Yom Kippur to do the work for us. That isn't teshuvah. That's self-preservation. Real teshuvah isn't about checking a box or proving that you are a good person. It requires vulnerability, admitting we were wrong, that we hurt someone, that a relationship matters enough to us to do the hard work of repair. What if we tried it ourselves? What if we called someone that we hurt and asked for forgiveness? Because in less than 24 hours, we'll be beating our chests saying, Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, for the sin we have committed before you. Our tradition won't let us hide behind that ritual. Yom Kippur demands we face the person we wronged. That takes us to tefillah. Practice Judaism unapologetically. If teshuvah is the step that brings us home, tefillah is what fills that home with light, with prayer and ritual practiced not for show, not for survival, but simply for love of the act itself. Too often we show up to Friday night services the week after an anti-Semitic incident, but we skip the other Fridays when it's just Friday. The ritual becomes armor, the practice protest. But what if we did it differently? Bake a challah, 2 loaves, the way our ancestors did in the wilderness. Take the Kiddush cup off the wall and polish it until it shines. Walk into synagogue not because you have to make a statement, but because you want to pray. Because you need a place where your phone is silent and so are the demands of the week. Because you want your kids to see joy, not just hear it. Because you need words bigger than your own for the week you've just lived. That's what our tradition calls hidur mitzvah, making a mitzvah beautiful. We don't come to services to prove we survived. We don't show up to make a statement to the world. We do it because Shabbat is beautiful, and this is what we Jews do. We do it because we want to, because it brings peace to our week, because it's ours. Only we get to decide what Shabbat means to us. Only we can choose what brings us to synagogue. And when we practice Judaism out of love, something happens. We can't help but carry that light beyond our own homes. Which brings us to tzedakah. Do justice unapologetically. Teshuvah brings us home. Tefillah fills that home with light. And then tzedakah pushes us outward to share that light with the world. Justice for its own sake. Tomorrow we'll read Isaiah's words. Is this the fast I choose? To unlock the fetters of wickedness, to let the oppressed go free, to share your bread with the hungry. The prophet isn't asking us to do justice to improve our reputation or to win allies. He's telling us this is what it means to be in covenant. When Abraham ran to greet the strangers at his tent, when our ancestors left the corners of their fields on harvest for the poor, they weren't performing goodness, they were living it. Picture this. You leave services and see a man standing outside Starbucks across the street holding a sign. You walk over, hand him a gift card, and say, "Have a nice day." For him, it means a meal. For you, it means living what you just prayed. Not because kindness is universal, but because you are Jewish and Torah shaped you. Because Torah commands if there is a needy person among you, do not harden your heart or shut your hand. Because Maimonides taught that the highest form of tzedakah is helping a person stand with dignity. Because our tradition insists we see the dignity of the other. This isn't a universal good, it's a Jewish good. This is what Jews do. That is tzedakah. Not performance, not PR, the work of making Judaism yours, one act at a time. There's a Hebrew word for this non-reactive and defensive Judaism. Lishmah, for its own sake. Baking challah not to prove you survived, but because it makes Friday night beautiful. Touching the mezuzah not to make a point, but to feel at home. Handing someone food not for PR, but because Torah shaped you to care. The practice itself moves us from fear to love, from defense to purpose. Not everyone can pivot immediately from that defensive posture to a Lishmah posture. The shift can be evolutionary. Our tradition teaches even if you don't start with pure motives, start anyway. Even if you study Torah to avoid ignorance, or show up because you feel under threat, or light candles just to prove we're still here, the practice itself can still change you. And over time, what begins in fear can turn into love. Start small. After you light candles or attend services, pause. Do you feel drained or at peace? Don't judge, just notice. What begins in survival can grow into Lishmah, the noblest of practices. So what is the reward for doing Judaism Lishmah? Not protection against anti-Semites, not external approval. The rabbis taught that the reward is becoming the kind of person who is beloved, humble, like an ever-flowing spring. The act itself moves us from fear to courage, from defense to purpose. My friends, that is the deepest form of Jewish security. Not gates, not guards, not proving ourselves to the world. Real security is living Judaism unapologetically. We've seen this proven in the most impossible places. Imagine a makeshift synagogue in Auschwitz. No Torah, no ark, no sanctuary. Just a circle of prisoners, It was Simchat Torah, the day when Jews celebrate completing the annual cycle of Torah reading. An old man looked around the circle of broken men and boys. His eyes fell on a young boy, maybe 13, maybe younger. He walked over slowly and asked, "Do you know the Shema?" The boy looked up surprised. "I know the Shema and more than that." The old man smiled for the first time in months. The Shema is enough. Then he raised his voice. "Come, Jews, it's Simchat Torah, time to dance around the Torah." What Torah? What dance? The old man walked back to that boy, and then, with trembling arms, lifted him high, the way we lift a Torah scroll for all to see. And the Jews understood. They formed a circle around the man and his living Torah, and they danced. When you have no Torah scroll, you lift a child who carries Torah in his heart. When you have no sanctuary, you create one with your circle. When everything else is stripped away, what remains is the grounding of identity. This is who we are, and this is what we do. Even then, even there, Jews lived Lishmah. Our ancestors danced when there was nothing to hold. That's the shape of Judaism lived Lishmah, for its own sake. So what about us? We have 8 Torah scrolls waiting in our 2 arks. We have the freedom to carry them through this sanctuary without fear. We have children chanting Hebrew from this bima, voices cracking and proud. We have a community that fills these chairs week after week. And Simchat Torah, come for the sound of kids darting through these aisles, laughter echoing off these walls. Come for the swirl of dancing, circles upon circles, and the Torah held high. If our ancestors could dance in Auschwitz with no scroll, no ark, nothing but a child lifted high, how much more should we dance here with everything we've been given? The question isn't whether we can, it's whether we will. Here's what I've learned. When you light candles because Friday night feels sacred, you might find yourself wanting to bake challah. When you study a piece of Torah that moves you, you'll want to share it. When you give tzedakah from your heart, you start noticing more ways to help. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai taught that mitzvot grow derech gedilatan. One authentic choice leads to another. So let me ask you directly, what Jewish practice calls to you? Not what you think you should do, not what proves you're a good Jew. What draws you? Choose something, one thing, because it stirs joy, memory, curiosity. This year, choose one thing. Light, study, give. Do it Lishmah. Because when we choose Lishmah, we claim Judaism as our own. And when we do, no one, not the critics, not the anti-Semites, not even our own fear, can take it from us. Gamar Chatima Tova.